Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji, forever associated with 1976, James Hunt becoming world champion in the rain. It's still associated with rain, but for Hunt, Reid Hamilton. 3 races to go and they line up in World Championship order for this Japanese Grand Prix. Raikkonen qualifying third, Alonso second, but yesterday Hamilton produced a pole position lap worthy of Hunt and every other great champion.
This is the shot for pole then, as he goes to the line. Lewis Hamilton makes it! Pole position for Lewis Hamilton. The McLaren boys go mad. It's a massive, massive result for Lewis Hamilton.
Formula One returns to the Fuji Speedway for the first time in 30 years, bringing with it the very unreliable weather that's a trademark of the Japanese Grand Prix. But it remains a place where British motorsport history is made, even more so after Lewis Hamilton's performance yesterday. But now, can Fuji in the wet also give a huge boost to Lewis Hamilton's quest for a World Championship title in this, his rookie year? It was a challenge which seemed to be losing momentum over the course of the last 3 races, but yesterday in qualifying it was Hamilton back to his absolute confident best. But Mark, that was damp conditions yesterday. Today it's really wet. What do you make of the weather we got today?
It's very difficult for the guys, and it's also difficult to see what they may do for the start. If the rain keeps coming down, Steve, there's an outside possibility that they may have to start behind the safety car. A lot of laying water out there. As we are at the moment, it's a little bit finer. It may start to just dry out, but big decision-making time.
Whichever way you look at it, and especially if they have to start behind the safety car, this pole position of Lewis Hamilton is looking better and better.
Crucial. Fantastic lap he did there, but so important now for this race. Obviously, if he gets off there cleanly, he's going to have the clear visibility. Everybody behind him, they're going to have to contend with all that spray coming off. And I pity the guys at the back of the grid. They'll be able to see virtually nothing.
Well, let's remind you that this is the first of 3 races that will decide the Drivers' Championship. Hamilton's lead has gone down to just 2 points as Fernando Alonso outperformed him in Turkey, Monza and Spa. And it means that Hamilton has to beat him in at least one of the 3 remaining races to keep his championship hopes alive. And then there's Raikkonen, 13 points behind. He has to keep winning like he did in Spa and hope for maybe some non-finishes from the McLaren drivers to claim his title. The rest of the pit lane feels it's between Hamilton and Alonso, but they're not sure who's going to claim the title or indeed why.
3 races to go. It's going to go down to the wire. I just think it's really who can keep their head under this extreme pressure and spotlight.
Each of those drivers, they don't know who's going to win the race. Sometimes Lewis is quicker than Alonso, sometimes Alonso is quicker than Lewis, and the same for Kimi as well. So that's the great thing about it. It's exciting. We haven't got a clue who's going to win.
I think the 3 races are coming. I think 2 of them show a Ferrari advantage. 1 of them I'm not so sure. Could be a bit more even. And then you get to the point, is Massa going to help Raikkonen to win the championship? It's a very interesting question. Of the McLaren drivers, I think, with the pressure on in these last few races with such a small gap between them, I think I'd probably favour Fernando. But it's going to be very close.
There's no question about it. It's heating up between the two McLaren guys. I mean, I can't see them both finishing the next 6 Grand Prix between the two cars, if you like, in terms of finishing normal positions without a bit of grazed elbows, let's say. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think Kimi's sitting there to also the pounds, to be honest. I mean, if both McLarens are in the fence and Kimi's gets a win, then it's game on to him as well. So momentum's with Alonso, but momentum is with Fernando. I mean, Hamilton hasn't been able to stay within the last 2 races, and so very tight.
It's very difficult to predict, being probably the closest championship for a while. I think it will be very difficult for Ferrari now, for both of them, especially for Felipe, obviously. I think they're just too far ahead unless something stupid happens with Lewis and Fernando. And I would say that Alonso will make it, simply because he has been stronger in the last couple of races.
I think that the fairy tale ending that everyone would like to see, especially the British viewers, is Lewis winning the championship for McLaren, and especially with all the turmoil in McLaren right now, it appears that the relationship with Alonso is over. So I don't suppose they really want him to win. So, the dream scenario would be Lewis in the McLaren. Except if you're a Ferrari fan, and of course I think that Kimi has driven, as always, extremely well, very fast, had a lot of reliability issues at the beginning of the year. So I guess the 2 guys that probably deserve it most are either Lewis or Kimi.
common sense tells you that Alonso is the clear favourite to take this year's title, but we haven't seen a lot of common sense in Formula 1 this year.
And there'll be plenty of common sense from Martin Brundle in our race commentary that's coming up. Most of the pit lane feels that it's going to be Alonso. What exactly has given him the edge, do you feel, in the last 3 races?
I think it's just pure experience, Steve. He's been there before a couple of times. You know what it's like to get to the end of the championship. It's tough, it's difficult, but he knows what it's going to take to finish it off. Lewis has never had this experience before, only in lower formulas. He's now leading the Formula 1 World Championship, but don't underestimate Lewis Hamilton. This guy is so fixed in his mindset where he's going. And this weekend so far is going all according to plan. Raikkonen is the outside bet. He could upset everything.
Yes, most of those driver comments came before Lewis's performance in qualifying yesterday, in which he was absolutely outstanding.
I have to say this is probably Lewis's best qualifying lap, his best pole position. To go out and have one lap in these kind of conditions and produce an outstanding, nigh-on perfect lap is so difficult. Ask any driver down this pit lane how tough that will be, and they'll all be amazed at what Lewis produced yesterday. Not a foot wrong, not a wheel wrong anywhere.
And it wasn't just a pole position, it was a big breakthrough in many ways for Lewis after what's happened over the last 3 races.
Big psychology break between him and Alonso. I'm the best man at the moment again. You'll have to stay behind me, and that's the kind of mentality he's got. And I think Alonso will have to try and rise above that again, because he will know from yesterday's performance of Lewis that he's very, very strong around here this weekend.
OK, we'll hear from the top 3 drivers in yesterday's qualifying after James Allen has taken us through the grid.
So let's take a look at the grid then for the Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji. Lewis Hamilton's 5th pole position of the year, and definitely the most important. Teammate Alonso is alongside him. 2 Ferraris make up row 2. Raikkonen ahead of Massa. Heidfeld hasn't been outside the top 10 all season. He's 5th, and it's a best of the year for Jenson Button in 6th. Webber is 7th, and Sebastian Vettel outstanding in the Toro Rosso. First time they've been in the top 10. Kubica and Fisichella make up row 5. The Renault's gambled on a dry race. Looks like it won't pay off. Kovalainen 11th, ahead of David Coulthard in 12th. Trulli and Liuzzi make up row 7. Row 8, Ralf Schumacher again off colour in the Toyota, and Nico Rosberg had to drop 10 places because he changed his engine. Barrichello and Wirtz make up row 9. Row 10, Anthony Davidson, the Super Aguri's not firing here, and Adrian Sutil. And at the back, 2 Japanese drivers, Sato and Yamamoto.
It's just about doing that lap which you analyse the circuit. You don't push too much that you make mistakes, but you just find your bearings, and then the next lap you know, okay, I need 5 metres later on that corner, 10 metres on that corner, come off the brakes earlier here, take a different line there, and once you get that, then that's why when I went into the last lap, I knew, boom, 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 this is where I need to do it.
First, we need to do a good start, because in wet conditions, the difference between a good start or bad start is huge. You can lose 4 or 5 places, and in dry is much more equal. So if I do a good start, I will try in the first corner. But also I need to keep an eye with the Ferraris, that normally they do a good starts, and we need to defend position.
I'm confident that we have a good car in the race, and it's going to be, I think so, tight race between all 4 cars.
It's great to have another pole position, and especially with everything that's happening, just how close and intense the championship's getting. It's a good comeback, I think.
Fuji Speedway, 2.8 miles, a very long pit straight, just under 1 mile. Some interesting braking zones and corners in the mid part of the lap. Let's analyse Lewis Hamilton's pole position. The track is wet. He's got 1 flying lap remaining before the checkered flag drops, and he's got to get it absolutely perfect. We've just flicked up to 7th gear. He chooses to use the middle of the pit straight, and he comes to the left-hand side very late into the braking zone for turn 1, and it's difficult to choose that moment. He hits the brakes now, it goes towards the apex, the back end is dancing gently away, but he's done it beautifully. 2 is easy. 3 is at the top of this small incline. It'll be down to 4th gear, around 100 miles an hour, and be careful not to run wide through the exit. Perfect. Turns 4 and 5 then are just kings. We've got a Ferrari ahead of us, but it stays out of the way. The braking zone for 6. He ignores the racing line, goes right around the outside for better grip. Now these next curves are flat out in dry conditions, and remain so in the wet too for Hamilton and the McLaren. Now this is one of the most important decisions this lap. Where to brake for the hairpin of turn 10. He's got it absolutely right. Kisses the apex. Just leans up gently against these curves. They're gloss painted and incredibly slippery in these conditions. the unsighted right-hander, the back end of the car dancing around. He's struggling to keep it on line. Now the left-hander at the top of the hill again, difficult to spot. This time he chooses to use the racing line. Now the final turn, and it's absolutely crucial. Don't tighten up on the wheel. Squeeze the throttle pedal gently on. He's onto the pit straight. He sees a chance of a slipstream. It's Vettel in the Toro Rosso, but he's slowing down to go in the pit. We duck out from underneath him. Look at Lewis's crash helmet. He's willing the car towards that timing beam, and over we go. He looks up immediately to a diamond vision screen and sees for himself he's on pole position. What a brilliant lap.
Lewis Hamilton wasn't the only driver putting in a brilliant performance in qualifying. Jenson Button punching way above his weight. Where did you manage to get that lap from?
Out there. I love the wet. I've always loved the wet, and I think it's always good because you can sort of find new lines in the wet, and you're pushing new boundaries, really. And I think that's why I'm up in 6th, not down in 12th or 14th, where we probably would have qualified in the dry.
You're quite a smooth driver as well. Does that help you in these conditions?
I think it will in the race. You know, it's very, very wet today, but still you can damage the tyres quite a bit and get graining. So it's important not to get that because then they overheat. So I'm very, very excited about today.
How tricky is it going to be out there today in these conditions?
It's going to be very tough. You know, I don't know how they're going to start the race really because it's very, very wet. Probably be a safety car. But then when does the safety car let us free, you know? Fair enough, you say we should be able to drive in these conditions, but the cars can't. You know, you aquaplane all the time. And when you're doing over, 150 mile an hour, it can be quite treacherous.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
He won't get many headlines, Mark, Jenson Button, but he's been absolutely outstanding in that car this season.
He has indeed, but I think he's getting a lot of credibility inside the paddock, and I'd actually say his stock's very high at the moment because people can see the job he's doing. But just what he was just touching on there, the possibility is that this grid will start behind the safety car. With more rain coming down now, a lot of laying water, and I also wouldn't be surprised they'd have to start on the extreme wet tyres, and that would be for the whole grid of cars.
And Jenson will be absolutely relishing those conditions. What makes him so good in the wet, and is it the quality that Lewis has as well?
I think you see it a lot in British drivers because they drive in poor conditions, mainly when they're growing up in England. But these guys, Jenson in particular, very smooth application of the throttle pedal, very smooth when he applies the brake, all important, and they just get a feel for the car and a feel for the circuit. You see Lewis on his qualifying lap, not actually touching some apexes, going out to find the grip on the circuit, and that's sensitivity, and that's something they learn when they're growing through the ranks.
Well, let's hope that Jenson gets a great result this afternoon, but it's Hamilton against Alonso that's grabbing all the headlines, of course. Is it a feud? Is it a rivalry, as many of the headlines are suggesting? And what is the relationship and the mutual respect between the two drivers, especially after that very aggressive opening lap in the Belgian Grand Prix 2 weeks ago?
Is it all just completely fair game now between you two?
Well, I didn't really push him to the wall. I gave him plenty of room. I should have pushed him in the wall. But, I gave him plenty of room, I just tried to be a fair driver, and I just trying to do the talking on the track, and do it with the results. So coming into this race, I just got to try and beat him, and that's going to hurt him more than put him in the wall, I think.
Spa is gone, and we will talk about this weekend, and we talk now about this circuit and about the low grip of the circuit. So very normal and relationship, and very good.
You said after the race you were going to be more aggressive. How's that going to sort of manifest itself? What did you mean by that?
I won't be leaving him room next time. Simple as that.
I think we will never crash into the other one. We are fighting for the World Championship, but at the same time we are intelligent people, and we try to finish the races. In any of the incidents that you can have in the start, you don't know if you will be the guy that stops in 10-1, so we cannot have that risk. So we want all to win, but we all want to cross the line at the end of the race, so this will not happen.
As Fernando has been the world champion, coming into the team, especially at the beginning of the season, he's the guy that's supposed to take them to the championship, and they've bent over backwards to make him feel comfortable. Me and Pedro have done the same. We've been told try and make Fernando feel welcome in the team. We've done that, and you saw what he did to the team. So
I think to become world champion, you need to have the full support from the team, and winning a world championship is a job that is doing from everybody, from the first to the last mechanic, not only here in the tracks, also in the factories, etc. So we are lucky now that we are in front of the championship, and we are fighting for winning the championship. And if we win or if we lose, will be everybody's job.
Going into these last crucial 3 races for the championship, what's your mindset? How are you fit?
Attack 110%. That's going with guns blazing. I don't know, no, literally just pushes and trying to do the best job I can without making mistakes, and then scoring as many points as I can at each race.
It's a fabulous season's climax, and this graphic shows how Alonso has eaten into Hamilton's World Championship lead over the last few races. They were level after round 5 in Monaco. Hamilton did open a 14-point lead held by his wins in Canada and the USA. Alonso got it back to 2 after his win in Germany. Back came Hamilton to win in Hungary, but then Alonso beat him in the last 3 races, and we're down to a 2-point lead for Hamilton once again. And if car setup has been the difference over the course of the last 3 races, it's a bit of a mystery, that area of development today.
Yeah, it's going to go out the window today, Steve, because these conditions are so variable, and I think this is an important race for Lewis. If he can get out in front, gets that clean visibility, leaves the pack behind, he can really make something special out of this and get an extra 2 points out of this race just to pump along his World Championship advantage. He has to win today and has to beat Alonso.
So to sum up, is this Japanese Grand Prix in many ways a much bigger test of driver than car than usual?
These conditions are a bigger test of the driver. There's a lot more risk attached to it. There's a lot more concentration needed. The variation is there every single lap, and it's so easy to make a mistake. So I think, there's a lot of importance on what goes on behind the wheel, more so than in the dry.
Well, let's hope from Lewis Hamilton's point of view that these conditions help to upset Alonso's momentum. Certainly tough conditions that we've got at the Fuji Speedway today. Is the Japanese Grand Prix going to be the big turning point in the battle for the championship? Maybe we'll start to find out after the break. Formula One returning to the Fuji Speedway, and returning with the kind of weather conditions in which James Hunt so famously clinched the world title here back in 1976. It's 30 years since the last Japanese Grand Prix here, but now, even if the weather hasn't changed, the circuit is very different indeed to the mid-70s, and Ted Kravitz is the guide to the circuit and its surroundings when you can see them.
The landscape's really stunning round here. The area around Mount Fuji is a world away from the industrialised centres of Tokyo and Osaka. Round here, it's all about mountains, forests and hot springs. And although this is a new venue for us in modern Formula One, it's not the first time that ITV Sport has been out at Fuji to follow the championship challenge of a young British McLaren driver.
And welcome to the most memorable climax of a Grand Prix season for over 10 years.
It was October 1976. F1 fans joined Dickie Davis to follow James Hunt's title finale. Rival Niki Lauda, in his first wet race after his fiery accident at the Nürburgring, pulled in to retire. Hunt finished 3rd and the job was done.
But James Hunt is the world champion.
Having won the World Championship, there was just one thing left for James to do.
What are your immediate plans now?
I shall be getting drunk.
This majestic and spiritual dormant volcano has a special significance to the locals.
Mount Fuji is obviously a famous mountain in the world. Highest mountain in Japan, 3,777 meters on top. But it can be very changeable weather here.
Takuma's not kidding. Since we've been here, Mount Fuji has only been visible for about an hour on Friday morning. The drivers like the track. It boasts the longest straight on the calendar at just under a mile long, and combines that with the fast corners of turns 3, 4 and 5. The paddock itself is functional. This is not one of those big state-funded, mines bigger than yours style facilities such as Shanghai or Bahrain. Fuji has a modest but pleasantly new pit building.
You know, as soon as you get into the track, the facilities are quite good, and the track itself seems quite attractive, and it will be good overtaking, and that's what we're missing in Formula One. So I think it's going to be a good race.
We're here in the first place because Fuji is owned by Toyota, and they wanted the prestige of hosting the Japanese Grand Prix. Previously, Honda have held the event at Suzuka.
It's very important to get most of our VIPs coming this weekend, and they expect a lot from us after a relatively poor season so far.
The enthusiasm of the Japanese fans is undimmed. Come dry or wet, they flock to Formula One. Clear favourites in the grandstands are Super Aguri, followed by Honda, Toyota and the rest.
I like Takuma Sato because I'm a Japanese. Best driver, Sato Takuma.
I like Raikkonen.
I love Jenson Button.
I like Felipe Massa.
I like Fuji Speedway. We are big Formula One.
Yeah!
So from Hamilton to Hunt, it seems Mount Fuji tends to bring the British driver a bit of luck. Back to you, Dickie.
So, James Hunt, the 1976 world champion, our congratulations to him, and goodbye from all of us here.
And let's hope that we're able to give Lewis Hamilton the same kind of sign-off as Dickie Davis was able to do for James Hunt 31 years ago. Goes without saying, really, Mark. Lewis and James Hunt, very different kind of characters and different kind of eras as well.
Definitely a different package now. The modern-day Grand Prix driver consists of so many different things. They have to be the politician, they have to be the diplomat, they have to be able to, promote themselves. James Hunt, what a character, though. I mean, we do miss some of those characters in Formula One now, but I think Lewis is probably the epitome of a modern-day Grand Prix driver.
But at the end of the day, it does come down to quite a bit of passion from the drivers and self-motivation. We've been seeing a lot of that from Lewis during the course of the last week. Some of the things he's been saying, quite aggressive comments, re Fernando Alonso in particular.
Well, there's been a lot of stuff out there in the media which we've seen, which supposedly Lewis has said, but sometimes you have a chat with Lewis and he says, look, I haven't said that, things have got turned around on us, but I don't know. I just see Lewis a little bit sort of playing the game where now and again he just pops in with a little answer and it stimulates a little bit more conversation, what then gets fed into the papers. And there's a little bit of prodding going on. I think he'd be better served just to do the stuff on the circuit, which he did yesterday, and he showed everybody what he can do. Let's wait and see. Alonso's a tough character, and I don't think he'll take any of that, and it won't go into his heart or his mind.
Well, certainly the pressure is on for everyone at this end of the season, and it's equally the same at the other end of the grid. This is a big race this afternoon also for another British driver, Anthony Davidson, in his Japanese Super Aguri team, and Louise Goodman was able to spend some time with Anthony, one of his last quiet weekends before heading out, swapping the cockpit for the canal boat and giving the impression of a very contented young man indeed.
It's good fun. It's a different pace of life to the F1 world, but me and Carrie, we go walking the dog a lot, and I do a lot of mountain biking as well. I'd love coming home from races and to get into the countryside. I mean, we live in the countryside.
He's a gorgeous dog, isn't he? How long have you had him?
I've had him since he was 8 weeks old. Rambo. He's a Patterdale Terrier from up north, and Cheshire way is where I got him from. And just saw that type of dog in a car once and waited there till the woman came back from the shop and said, "What's that?"
Seriously?
Yeah. And he's just had a really sort of inquisitive looking face, pretty cute, and just the right size for right size for me. Couldn't have a dog that was too big, could I?
Let's talk about racing for a bit. I mean, 6 years you were testing for Honda, and then finally you got your chance in a race seat. Has it lived up to its expectations?
Absolutely. I mean, even at the back of the grid, I'm just loving every minute of this year. I mean, every race I do is a bonus because I spent so long as a test driver that I never really lost hope that it would happen. But there were frustrating years, and for it to finally pay off and be racing is everything that I worked for those 5 years.
Fuji coming up next. What are your thoughts on the race?
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. The fans are just crazy there. It's so good to see. They're so enthusiastic, and they've got a real good eye for detail as well, the Japanese, and I think they can see the struggle that it's been, the job that everyone's done at Super Aguri, and they respect that.
You say it's been a struggle, but you've fairly regularly been outperforming the sort of Honda A team, as it were.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant year from that way to be able to sort of take the challenge to bigger teams. Especially to Honda as well, because we obviously share a lot of the same technology and the engines. But yeah, it's things have come our way this year. We have had a bit of luck every now and again, but I think we deserve a bit of luck.
Tell me about home life. You're a very happy man in your home life, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think all the money in the world or all the fame in the world would ever change me. I always laugh about that. I'm very un-Formula One, I think. Even though we get to live the glamorous life in the Formula One calendar, it will never change me. I know it won't.
You said to me earlier in the year that getting married to Carrie was the best thing you'd ever done. Why was that?
It's just the biggest achievement I think I've ever had. I feel amazingly settled even though the world that we live in is very sort of fast-moving, and you're never really sure what you're doing from year to year. It's a piece of my life that's just stable. Kerry comes around all the races as well. She's my PA, if you like, when she's there, so it works out really well. And then and to always have someone around you that's 100% behind you as well, because that's not always the case in the F1 world.
He's a good character, Anthony Davidson, and he's had a pretty good season as well. He'd love to swap places, though, I'm sure, with Lewis Hamilton. I don't know how good a reader of body language you are within the McLaren garage here. Seems to be a lot more tension than usual.
I think it's just a little bit of uncertainty about the conditions, Steve. That's the situation. Everyone's unsettled in terms of what they need to be doing next. There's so much water on the circuit, so much more rain coming down. It seems more and more certain that we'll be starting with a safety car and extreme wet tyres for sure going out on the exploration lap.
But in a way, that takes one big decision away.
It does indeed. As long as everybody else is on the same tyre and we're in the same ballpark, that's a little bit of confidence for them to work on. But, you know, there's a lot of pressure building up, and you can see there is a little bit of that pressure overflowing into the garage. Everybody's on tenterhooks, just understanding that in another half an hour's time, maybe we'll see another outcome of what this Grand Prix season holds.
Well, it's a race of uncertainties, but one thing we're confident of from this season, whether he's world champion or not, he's certainly Rookie of the Year, Lewis Hamilton. 3 race wins, a 2-point lead in the championship, 5 pole positions, including this weekend. And despite everything that he's achieved this season, when I talked to him yesterday evening, he was especially thrilled with the way he handled his pole position lap yesterday.
On that lap, well, obviously I knew I was around 3rd or 4th, and just had to make sure that I really put the lap together, as always in qualifying. But, you know, I had the good car underneath. I knew where the grip was. I had confidence in the balance of the car, and so I went into that. I knew I had to put the car here and there and brake a little bit later at certain corners. And it was all coming together, and I was thinking, okay, just don't lose it now. And I got to the last corner. I think I lost a little bit of time on the exit. You know, you never do a perfect lap. But coming across the line, I could see there's a camera, just a TV screen just up above here. And I could see, you know, I was just hoping it wasn't going to be an orange little sort of sector, and it came up green, and I was overwhelmed. I don't know if you could see.
Do you have a chance to check things like that on the big screen as you go around?
Well, it's a very long straight. You could have a cup of tea on this straight. You know, it is so long.
Yeah. And then the celebration was almost a race victory kind of celebration, because I suppose it feels a bit like a big breakthrough, especially after the last 3 races.
It does. There's something about qualifying. I can't really say what it is. I think it's just because it's so intense. A race is intense, but it's over a much longer period. And it means so much going into the next day. You know, it means so much with the weekend you're having, the momentum you're carrying. If you get the pole position, it's just even it was just as exciting as my first race, my first qualifying pole position, and came across the line, and I was so ecstatic. I wanted to jump out the car and do something crazy, but you know, you're punching the air and you're strapped in, so you can't get out. It's a great feeling.
You've been saying some other things this week. You've been putting a question mark behind Fernando's loyalty to the team. What exactly did you mean by that? And is it the right thing to make sure that there's still some heat in this situation here?
You know what? I haven't been saying that. People, the media, they're terrible. They try to twist all of your words and put words in your mouth. And so they'll say, do you think Fernando's being loyal to the team? Well, I said no, because that's the truth. And then they asked me, have you lost respect for Fernando? I said no comment. I still respect him for everything that he's achieved. But perhaps his personality is not the same. Well, personality is not the person I actually thought he was. And I think that's just for any youngster that's trying to come up to a class, and you look, if youngsters might be looking up at me, I hope that I don't let them down. And that's just what he's done for me. And I hope I hope that I do a better job than he does.
One thing is clear, there's no love lost and not a great deal of respect there either.
I think there's a lot of respect in terms of the abilities of both the drivers. They look at each other and understand what they can both do. But for sure, the personalities are very different. And Lewis Hamilton has been with McLaren since he's a child, and he's embedded in this team. Alonso turned up as world champion, and it's not quite gelled. I don't know, let's wait and see what happens, but I'm not sure Alonso's going to be around here for much longer.
The car's heading out, and Fernando Alonso will just take one step aside. He blasts out of the garage alongside Lewis Hamilton. Quick thought, how nervous should Lewis this be about what Alonso might do at the start, especially after what we saw in Spa?
Well, I think there would be an element of nerves there with both of them, what we saw at Spa, because, you know, they gave each other little room on the circuit. But these conditions, as I say, Steve, I think you may well see the safety car starting this race. At that point, it'll be a clean start. They'll be going very slowly behind the safety car. Let's wait and see when the lights go out and see whether the race can, start with a little bit more aggression. If they do start the race normally, I don't know what will happen. I can't predict it.
And then the important thing from Lewis's point of view, which is maybe why the concentration is so intense inside the garage, it has to be an absolutely mistake-free drive.
It has to be perfect. He can't afford to make one single mistake in these conditions, nor can any other driver. But Lewis Hamilton, one of his biggest strengths, one of his biggest assets, is that mental capability of not making mistakes. He very, very rarely makes them. We've seen Alonso make more mistakes this season than Lewis, and that's remarkable for a rookie driver.
So Hamilton in the car, all set. The eyes tell the story, I think, that even he appreciates that this race is bigger than any other he's driven in during the course of this season so far.
I think this is going to be one of his toughest tasks because these conditions are so poor. You know, what I'm concerned about is the straight. It's nearly a mile long, 200 miles an hour. Visibility will be very poor, and aquaplaning will be a big problem. You just have to look at the tyres. There's not a lot of contact patch there on the road, and even though they've got those huge amounts of downforce, at those kind of speeds, it's very difficult to keep that car on the straight. Sounds bizarre, but it's truthful.
Well, it's not the championship decider, but it certainly feels like it, and it's so reminiscent, isn't it, of James Hunt back in 1976.
It's deja vu from 1976 in many ways. Just seeing the McLaren sitting on pole position, and James Hunt in that earlier video winning for McLaren. But I think there's still a lot at stake. We've still got these guys here capable of winning this race in the World Championship. And, it's so exciting to actually be at this time in the season, and we've still got 3 main contenders.
Well, a lot of time spent over final preparations. He's in no rush to get out there on that grid. But he'll be desperately keen for this Japanese Grand Prix to get underway. Meticulous preparations from within the McLaren garage. How do you judge? I mean, we talk a lot about the spirit within this McLaren team and the way that maybe there are 2 sides to that team spirit at the moment. It all seems to be bubbling around Lewis, doesn't it?
I think Lewis generates a lot of this bubbling. He generates a lot of excitement. He comes into the garage, as we saw earlier. He makes everybody feel confident, and he wants them to be with him out on the circuit. This now is the all-important time, because from this point onwards, he's on his own. It's all on his shoulders. He's going to drive out the garage now. He makes all the decisions now.
Wet weather tyres and a final blast out into the spray of the pit lane, and Lewis Hamilton is on his way. So many uncertainties lie ahead in this Japanese Grand Prix. One thing that we are confident of, whether or not he wins the World Championship title, or at least I think we're confident, is that Lewis will be a McLaren driver next year. We're entering the season of driver speculation and driver changes. In many ways, that season is overdue because, as Louis Goodman reports, we're waiting for a decision on the future from one man in particular.
Fallout from the ongoing friction between Fernando Alonso and his McLaren paymasters reaches far beyond the boundaries of the Woking team. Alonso has a contract with McLaren for 2008, but the poor relations between the driver and his bosses has led to speculation that Fernando might look for a seat elsewhere next year. It's a question he's refusing to address.
There have been a lot of things saying about me that they are not exactly true, but I will not answer every day what the people are talking about me.
But if Fernando did leave McLaren, where could he go? The rumour mill has Felipe Massa being shifted to Toyota to free up a seat alongside Kimi Raikkonen at Ferrari. Meanwhile, Flavio Briatore has made no secret of his desire to reunite Alonso with the team that brought him 2 World Championships. The speculation is making life difficult for the driver managers who are looking to secure a berth for their charges next year.
Giancarlo wants to stay with Renault, and obviously we have to stay with Renault. But until the situation with Fernando is clear, we cannot be confident.
Fisichella's future is under further threat from Renault tester Nelson Piquet Jr., who looks likely to step up to a race seat next season. This year could also be the swan song for Ralf Schumacher. His Toyota contract is about to expire, and the team doesn't look to be in a hurry to re-sign the German.
Nothing has been decided from both sides, neither from Toyota, neither from me, so some more patience is needed.
Current Renault incumbent Heikki Kovalainen has been touted as a possible teammate for Jarno Trulli at Toyota in 2008. Nico Rosberg's also said to be on the team shopping list, but he's adamant that he's staying where he is.
There's no chance. I have a contract with Williams for next year.
The future's not nearly so certain for Alex Wirtz. Tonio Liuzzi, current tester Kazuki Nakajima, and GP2 Championship hopeful Timo Glock have all been mentioned as possible candidates for the second Williams seat. Elsewhere, Honda, Red Bull, Sauber BMW and Super Aguri are all expected to field an unchanged lineup next year. Toro Rosso has already confirmed the two Sebastians, Bourdais and Vettel, but Spike are in no hurry to find a partner for Adrian Sutil. The seat will probably go to the man with the biggest fistful of sponsors' dollars. That just leaves the 12th team, ProDrive, who are expected to confirm shortly that McLaren testers Pedro de la Rota and Gary Pafford will join the Formula One ranks at the 2008 season opener in Australia.
Well, we'll be out on the grid at this Fuji Speedway in just a few minutes' time, but Mark and myself have now moved from the tumult of the pit lane to the comparative peace of this rather bleak paddock at Fuji. But still on the subject of Alonso's future and driver changes, Louise has also been talking to the Ferrari boss, Jean Todt.
You've no doubt heard the speculation that's been going around the paddock this weekend that Fernando Alonso might become available for 2008. If that is the case, would Ferrari be interested in signing him?
We have both drivers, Felipe and Kimi, under contract with Ferrari for 2008. So, I mean, we respect our contract. Both did a fantastic job. That means that Alonso is not a great driver. He's now fighting for the third Drivers' Championship. And he's a great driver. I have a big respect for him as a driver. But we are very happy with our both contracted drivers. So
Lewis Hamilton has taken his position at the head of this grid. Fernando Alonso will be alongside. Interesting thoughts as we enter this supposed season of driver changes. It was unthinkable, Mark, a couple of weeks ago that we might have been assuming that Fernando Alonso was going to remain at McLaren next season, but that seems increasingly likely, doesn't it?
I don't know at the moment. It's so difficult to read what's going on. Only yesterday afternoon I stood in amazement as I saw Fernando Alonso walk into the Renault hospitality area. And you could see that there was something going on. And this is the kind of conditions we're talking about now, Steve. There's so much laying water out there. You see Raikkonen just off the road. He's laying water, aquaplaning. They're trying to get the limitations. It's very important to understand what grip levels they've got. Just watch him going down. Look, correcting. There's no point in trying to get round the corner. Just run off the road and come back on again. But that just shows you the level of grip. Very little.
And is this conditions performing as they will in the race, or is this drivers exploring the limits of what they can do out there?
These are the kind of conditions the guys are going to have to undertake now. And, you saw the amount of spray there coming off. Can you just imagine what it would be like sitting behind that Raikkonen then with the amount of spray then coming into your visor? There's no mud guards, there's no windscreen wipers. You can see a little plastic bag going on. That's just to keep the guy's boots dry. He doesn't want wet boots on the pedals of a race car. The last thing you want to do is just slip off a throttle or brake pedal.
Dreadful conditions, difficult conditions, not just for the drivers but for the pit crew who have to work in this incessant rain that's falling at the Fuji Speedway. Back on row 4, Mark Webber has qualified alongside Sebastian Vettel. Let's hear from the Australian.
Well, Mark, it looks like it's in for the day, this rain. What's the team's forecast?
Yeah, similar. I think we're going to see a dry track today, so fine mist and heavy rain at times. So be an interesting motor race.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're going to start behind a safety car. And what have the last-minute instructions been from the team?
Well, obviously it's survival, isn't it? I mean, you've got to try and survive these first few laps, but the visibility will be poor. And the rivers are huge, so never been there before.
Where are the worst rivers? Where's the worst standing water?
Run to turn 3, exit to turn 3, 7 and 8.
Thanks. Have a good one.
More thoughts from the drivers in a few minutes' time. The conditions are not good at all. Fernando Alonso giving his thoughts at the moment. But if you've been logging on to the ITV F1 website, you'll know that that's where you can put your questions directly to Mark Blundell, and he provides the answers in question mark.
This week's question comes from Michael Gillespie in Fort William. He asks, how do the drivers learn the circuits when they've never raced on them before?
Usually I try to play it on a computer game, but I didn't really find a good one for this season. for Fuji here. So I will walk it later, probably do a few laps in a scooter, and then have a look at the simulations we've done.
I haven't even found a proper video clip even on the internet or anywhere, so it's a little bit more tricky than normal, but we walk the track. I've walked it this time a couple of times rather than just once.
I go out, look around the circuit, obviously look at onboard footage from previous events here, so I can get a feel for what it looks like from the driver's point of view. Unless you come here and walk on the circuit, there isn't much that you can do. I mean, PlayStations and things like this can give you some idea, but I honestly didn't bother.
For sure, the best learning will be being on the track in the car, and the first morning of practice. Yes, learn the track.
A lot of the corners are straightforward straight away, but obviously then to really get them sorted, specifically what each corner needs from yourself and the car takes obviously another 5, 6, 10 laps.
You can try and learn a circuit on a games console, you can try and walk around, you could even go in the most sophisticated simulator, but at the end of the day, no substitute for the real thing.
And then it rains and you have to relearn the whole thing. But ITVF1.com, the ITV website, that's where you can communicate with Mark and also get all the latest news and information on what's happening in the sport. And what's happening in Japan at the moment is that it's raining. But let's first of all give you a chance at the ITV-F1 competition before we get back on the grid.
This weekend we're giving you and a friend a chance to be one of the first visitors to the Singapore Formula One street circuit. The inaugural night race on the 28th of September next year uses existing roads and some new sections currently under construction. You'll get to see the downtown circuit before anybody else in the Formula One world. You and a friend will be flown to Singapore at the beginning of next year. Stay 3 nights in a 5-star hotel in the centre of this vibrant city. Have a private VIP tour of the proposed street circuit, plus a Singapore city tour. To be in with a chance of winning this fantastic prize, just answer this simple question. Which continent is Singapore in? Is it A, Asia, B, Africa, or C, Europe? The number to call is 0901 293 2020 or text F1 plus your answer, A, B or C, to 63337. Calls cost £1 per entry from a BT landline. Calls from other networks and mobiles may be higher. Text will cost £1 plus the standard network rate. Entrance must be 18 or over. And satellite viewers can press the red button, and lines close at 6 p.m. on Thursday the 18th of October.
Good luck with that, and let's hope that the weather in Singapore, even at night, is better than the weather that we've got this afternoon for this Japanese Grand Prix. But the race goes ahead. Fernando Alonso looking determined. At what stage will the drivers get an indication of how this race is going to be started, whether a safety car will be involved, and how exactly does that work?
The FIA will have to make a decision on that, and it will be fed through to all the team principals, team management sitting on the wall, and will then feed it through to the driver. But, we won't be far away from getting something which will be in stone. The guys know the conditions, they understand how bad it is out there, and, there's an element of wariness now to see where we should start this race. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest with you, to start it behind a safety car.
OK, let's go back down on that grid and let's see who Louise has got. Adrian Sutil, I believe.
A man with local knowledge of this circuit, you've raced here quite regularly. What are the things to look out for today in these conditions?
Well, at the moment we have a lot of aquaplaning. There's so much water on the circuit, and it's even difficult to go straight on. Sometimes you have some snaps on the straight, so very difficult condition. I think the most important is stay on the track and finish your race.
Any particular areas of the circuit that are going to be very treacherous?
Particularly, well, everywhere is very, very dangerous, very difficult. The straights, sometimes you don't really see the water. The water rivers on the straight, so you need to be really careful and always watch out to the rivers on the circuit.
Stay safe.
Adrian Sutil, surprisingly disappointing in qualifying yesterday. Sebastian Vettel was the star, giving Toro Rosso their best ever qualifying performance, putting that car on row 4. Vettel and Button were the stars of qualifying yesterday.
They were indeed, and Vettel did a great job in Toro Rosso. I think everybody was very excited and very happy with that. But Adrian Sutil there was just saying it snaps on the straight, and basically what he's saying there, Steve, is believe it or not, you can actually be going down the straight, clicking up the gears, and the rear end of the car will break out just with lack of grip and traction. And again, with that aquaplaning, that thin layer of water built up between the tyre and the contact patch of the road. You think it's not possible, but I can assure you it is.
enormous crowd and enormous passion for Formula One in this part of the world. How hungry are they for any kind of Japanese Formula One success?
Oh, I think there's a huge amount of hunger for having a world champion from Japan at some stage, but we've had a lot of successful Japanese drivers. Unfortunately today both the Japanese guys are on the back row of the grid, but I think they will still be enjoying themselves.